It all began with two very different traditions, born oceans apart, that would one day collide in the most delicious way. Let's travel back in time, not 100 years, not 200 years. Let's go back nearly 1,000 years. Long before the United States existed, long before the word fried chicken was ever spoken, West African communities across the region that is today Ghana, Nigeria, and Senegal were already frying poultry in oil, seasoning it boldly with pepper and spices native to the land. Chicken was not an everyday luxury. It was reserved for celebrations, ceremonies, and honored guests. But when it was prepared, it was often fried, crisp on the outside, deeply seasoned throughout. No one in these villages could have imagined that this cooking method would one day cross an entire ocean and become one of the most recognized foods on the planet. But history rarely moves gently, and the next chapter of this story is written in one of humanity's darkest periods. Beginning in the 1500s and continuing for centuries, millions of West Africans were forcibly taken from their homelands and transported across the Atlantic Ocean through the horror of the transatlantic slave trade. Enslaved men and women were stripped of their freedom, their families, their names, but they could not be stripped of everything. Knowledge survived, memory survived, and among the things carried in the minds of enslaved cooks, passed from generation to generation despite unimaginable suffering, was the West African tradition of frying chicken in hot oil, well seasoned and deeply flavorful. Now let's shift our gaze across the ocean to a very different tradition, developing at nearly the same time in Scotland. Scottish cooking, unlike much of the rest of Britain, had its own deep fried chicken tradition dating back centuries. Unlike the English, who typically baked or boiled their poultry, Scottish cooks had long favored frying chicken in fat, producing a dish that was crispy, rich, and satisfying. When Scottish immigrants began settling in the American South in large numbers during the 1600s and 1700s, they brought this frying tradition with them. And here is where our two threads, one carried in chains across the Atlantic, one carried by choice, finally meet. On southern plantations, enslaved African and African American cooks were often responsible for preparing meals for white plantation households. Working within the constraints of this brutal system, these cooks took the Scottish method of frying chicken and transformed it completely, applying the bold seasoning techniques, deep spicing, and culinary artistry of their West African heritage. The result was something entirely new, not purely Scottish, not purely West African, a dish forged from forced displacement, resilience, and extraordinary culinary skill. Fried chicken, as the world would eventually come to know it, was born in the kitchens of enslaved black cooks in the American South. This is a difficult truth, but an essential one. The dish that would one day become a symbol of American comfort food, of Sunday dinners and celebrations, was created under conditions of profound injustice by people who received no credit, no compensation, and often no acknowledgement at all. And yet, within their own communities, fried chicken carried a very different meaning. For enslaved and later freed Black Americans, chicken was one of the few animals they were permitted to raise and own themselves, since it required little land and modest resources. Because of this, fried chicken became deeply associated with celebration, family gatherings, and Sunday dinners after church. A rare and cherished moment of abundance and joy in lives, otherwise marked by hardship. After the end of slavery in 1865, this association only deepened. In the decades that followed, Black entrepreneurs, many of them women, became some of the earliest fried chicken business owners in America. Perhaps the most famous of these was a woman who never even sought fame for it. Let's pause here and travel to a specific place, Gordonsville, Virginia. In the late 1800s, trains passing through this small railroad town would stop briefly at the station. Black women, many of them formerly enslaved, would rush to the windows of the train cars, holding up baskets and trays of fried chicken to sell to hungry passengers through the windows. Gordonsville earned the nickname the fried chicken capital of the world, and these women, later remembered as the waiter carriers, became one of the earliest and most significant forces in spreading fried chicken's popularity across the American railroad system. and eventually across the country. Their chicken traveled with the passengers. Their recipes traveled with the memory of that taste. By the early 1900s, fried chicken had become firmly established as a cornerstone of what would come to be known as Southern and soul food cuisine. It appeared at church picnics, family reunions, holiday tables, and eventually in the earliest black-owned restaurants across the South. But fried chicken's journey into a global phenomenon still had one enormous chapter left to be written. The year's 1930. In a small roadside gas station in Corbin, Kentucky, a man named Harlan Sanders began cooking meals for hungry travelers passing through. His fried chicken quickly became so popular that he expanded his gas station into a full restaurant, eventually developing his now famous blend of 11 herbs and spices. Sanders, who would later become known worldwide as Colonel Sanders, an honorary title bestowed by the state of Kentucky, spent years perfecting a pressure frying technique that could cook chicken faster while keeping it remarkably juicy inside its crispy coating. In 1952, at the age of 62, with little more than his recipe and sheer determination, Sanders began franchising his restaurant concept. What started as a single roadside stand would eventually become Kentucky Fried Chicken, known today simply as KFC. By the 1960s, KFC restaurants were opening across the United States at a remarkable pace. And then the company did something few American food brands had attempted before. It began expanding internationally, opening locations in England, then Japan, then dozens of other countries around the world. Few could have predicted just how enormous this expansion would become. In Japan, KFC transformed into an unlikely Christmas tradition. Beginning in the 1970s, thanks to a now legendary marketing campaign, KFC became so associated with Christmas dinner that millions of Japanese families now order fried chicken meals weeks in advance to guarantee they get one on Christmas Day. In China, KFC became one of the most successful Western fast food chains ever to enter the market, with thousands of locations across the country, often adapting its menu to include regional Chinese flavors alongside its classic fried chicken. Meanwhile, back in the United States, other fried chicken chains rose alongside KFC. Popeyes, founded in Louisiana in 1972 with a spicier Cajun-inspired take on the dish. Church's Chicken, Bojangles, and countless independent black-owned restaurants that had been serving fried chicken to their communities long before it ever became a global fast food phenomenon. In the 2000s and 2000s, fried chicken experienced yet another transformation: the rise of Nashville hot chicken, a fiery cayenne-crusted variation with its own remarkable origin story rooted in black culinary history in Tennessee, which spread rapidly from a single beloved restaurant into a nationwide and eventually worldwide trend. Fried chicken sandwiches ignited entire fast food wars between major American chains, with customers lining up for hours to try the latest crispy creation. Today, fried chicken is prepared and celebrated across nearly every continent. In South Korea, double-fried Korean fried chicken, coated in sweet and spicy glazes, has become a beloved dish enjoyed with beer in restaurants across the country and increasingly around the world. In the Caribbean, fried chicken is deeply woven into island cuisines, seasoned with local spices and Scotch bonnet peppers. In the Philippines, Nigeria, Brazil, and countless other countries, fried chicken has been embraced, localized, and made entirely their own. So the next time you bite into a piece of crispy fried chicken, whether from a bucket at a fast food counter, a plate at a Sunday family dinner, or a spicy sandwich at a trendy new restaurant, remember this: you are tasting a story that begins in West African villages, seasoned with knowledge that survived the unimaginable horror of the transatlantic slave trade. You are tasting a story shaped by Scottish frying traditions carried across an ocean. You are tasting the resilience, artistry and culinary genius of enslaved and freed black cooks who transformed hardship into one of the most beloved dishes in human history. You are tasting the waiter carriers of Gordonsville, reaching through train windows with baskets of golden chicken. You're tasting a Kentucky roadside stand that grew into a global empire. From West African kitchens to Southern plantation households, from Gordonsville train platforms to a small gas station in Kentucky, and from there to nearly every corner of the modern world, fried chicken carries within it one of history's most complicated, most painful, and yet most enduring stories of resilience and flavor. Perhaps the world's most powerful history lesson is hidden inside a single crispy, golden piece of fried chicken.